Morning, everyone. I'm Shona, presenting key findings on inclusive teaching communication strategies for students with mental health and behavioural issues, focusing on trauma. We'll discuss trauma's effects on learning and behaviour, vicarious trauma in educators, and the need for trauma-informed approaches in schools. I'll evaluate existing literature and conclude with practical recommendations for creating supportive school environments for students and educators. So the presentation focuses on creating trauma-informed classrooms through 5 key strategies. The first one is building emotionally safe learning spaces. So by establishing predictable environments with clear expectations and supportive relationships to reduce anxiety and promote engagement. Number 2, by implementing empathetic and inclusive communication. So using consistent routines that prioritise active listening, validation to help students feel valued and heard. Number 3 is to empower via strengths-based methods, so focusing on students' strengths and resilience while incorporating self-regulatory techniques to enhance wellbeing. Number 4, to cultivate inclusive classrooms, so recognise that the diverse backgrounds, integrate varied perspectives and address cultural biases to foster belonging and support academic success. And lastly, to embed principles in school systems to ensure trauma-informed practices are integrated across all school systems, prioritising safety and emotional well-being for a sustainable culture of care. I chose this topic due to the noticeable decline in mental health and engagement among my students. This prompted me to seek strategies to support their well-being. A 2024 HCF study found that 36% of primary school children in Australia feel stress about school, with 24% experiencing this on a weekly basis. Moreover, 70% of teachers reported an increase in disruptive behaviours like aggression and bullying since 2019. Traditional school discipline methods like rewards, punishments, and suspension often overlook the root causes of student behaviour and fail to teach essential emotional regulation skills. Research shows that punitive measures can worsen behaviour issues, that they can worsen behavioural issues and create a cycle of chronic stress, hindering skill development. Many students face trauma from violence, abuse, or illness, affecting their learning and mental health. Identifying the impact of trauma is vital for creating effective school support systems. This presentation will explore the significant effects of trauma on students, including its impact on their learning, behaviour, and well-being. It will also address vicarious trauma in educators, highlighting how exposure to students' traumatic stresses and experiences affects teachers' emotional health. Recognising these issues emphasises the need for trauma-informed approaches in schools which address students' immediate needs and create a supportive environment. The presentation will conclude with practical recommendations for implementing trauma-informed practices that ensure a safe educational setting for both students and educators. The key findings that I found show that trauma, especially adverse childhood experiences or ACEs, negatively impact student learning and their emotional regulation. This has escalated since the COVID-19 pandemic also. There were 3 themes that I came across constantly. Trauma disrupts memory, attention, and cognitive functions. Educators face various trauma from student suffering, and trauma-informed approaches are crucial for the well-being of students and staff. These findings emphasise the importance of creating trauma-sensitive environments over traditional disciplinary systems to promote healing and resilience. Trauma disrupts learning by impairing attention, memory, cognitive function, and emotional regulation in students with adverse childhood experiences. Unmet basic needs, as per Maslow's hierarchy, impede higher order learning since safety and emotional stability are essential. Trauma-exposed students often experience poor academic performance, chronic absenteeism, and behavioural issues, with greater risks linked to more adverse experiences. Educators must understand that traditional teaching and punitive discipline are ineffective for these students. Meeting foundational safety needs is crucial. Without doing so, academic interventions may fail or cause harm. Creating safe environments is essential for effective learning and compassion. Trust is essential for learning, as students who feel emotionally safe with supportive teachers are more engaged, take academic risks, and show resilience. Research shows that caring teacher-student relationships lead to better academic performance and motivation, helping counteract trauma's negative effects. Conversely, mistrust can cause disengagement, behavioural issues, especially for students with trauma histories. Educators can build trust through reliability, empathy, and clear communication. Small gestures can significantly impact relationships, which are crucial for the stability and support students need to succeed academically and emotionally. Vicarious trauma or secondary traumatic stress, STS, occurs when individuals experience emotional and behavioural effects from engaging with others' traumatic experiences. This is particularly relevant in caring professions, including teaching, where empathy can lead to emotional strain. While teaching is a compassionate vocation, it is also highly stressful, with Johnson's study ranking it among the highest in occupational stress. Additional research confirms that teachers report higher stress levels than many other professions. Exposure to student trauma combined with the desire to help increases vulnerability to vicarious trauma. There has been a rise in student trauma from abuse and displacement, increasing emotional demands on educators who must balance academic and emotional support. Research by Oberg indicates that lack of trauma-aware training leaves teachers vulnerable to compassion fatigue, STS, and burnout. Many educators feel unprepared for these challenges, leading to emotional exhaustion. This disconnect between student needs and teacher readiness heightens stress and burnout negatively. Extensive literature highlights the significance of trauma-informed practices in education to alleviate trauma's effects on students. And they're focusing on the 4 Rs. And the 4 Rs are realising, recognising, responding, and resisting re-traumatisation. Resources connect these practices to improved relationships and academic success, fostering a positive school culture. Challenges to implementation include insufficient professional development, a lack of leadership support, engagement difficulties, inadequate training and resources, resistance to change, poor evaluation mechanisms, cultural insensitivity, fragmented service delivery, mental health stigma, and policy mismanagement. Addressing these barriers is essential for effective trauma-informed practices in schools. Reflecting on the systematic review process that I undertook, I've identified some strengths and some challenges. My strengths that I've identified was it was a comprehensive search. I utilised multiple academic databases and grade literature for a broad range of studies. It was a structured approach with enhanced reproducibility and transparency through my methodology of searching. There was rigorous screening, it was title-based search, and abstract screening minimised bias and ensured study quality. But the challenges that I did come across was my keyword selection. I was using those keywords to refine my searches to lessen the amount of articles that I was getting. The database selection I found quite challenging. The screening process in terms of the amount of articles that came up, which also links with my keywords, and managing duplicates and data extraction. Sometimes I found I couldn't get into some articles, and the synthesizing of all of the articles and putting it all together so I could get my key themes. I've also added here like potential biases affecting the review. That was a little bit of a negative. I think I was okay at utilising all of the research, but that was definitely a challenge also. My conclusion and recommendations. So, trauma greatly affects primary age students, which I've already stated, impacting their learning, behaviour, and emotional well-being. This is particularly increased after the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic. So signs of trauma include the concentration issues, the memory retention, the difficulties of emotional regulation, challenges, and behavioural problems, all hindering academic success. Educators are crucial in identifying and addressing these issues or these signs through trauma-informed practices, um, which promote trust and emotional support for their students. So, in using inclusive communication strategies like active listening and empathetic responses can enhance students' sense of belonging and their engagement in their learning. The literature emphasises vicarious trauma among educators and the need for systematic support to reduce burnout and compassion fatigue, prioritising educator wellbeing and offering professional development in trauma-informed practices can create a supportive environment for both the students and the staff. Also, additionally, integrating inclusive communication within a trauma-informed framework is vital for addressing the needs of traumatised students, fostering a school culture of empathy, safety, responsiveness to help them thrive academically and emotionally. This is not also beneficial for students who have suffered trauma or are going through trauma, because we know that there are many students in schools that are quite lucky and they don't have a trauma background, which is really, really good. But these approaches are still beneficial for them also. Research emphasises the need for educators to be trained to recognise and address trauma effectively, and system-wide ongoing training is crucial. As isolated workshops are inadequate, professional development should be integrated into daily practice and supported by leadership for better outcomes for educators and students. Pre-service teachers benefit from trauma-informed training that fosters empathetic and equitable interactions with students. Increasing their knowledge in trauma-informed practices through teacher education programs is vital for addressing childhood trauma. Leadership is essential in sustaining trauma-informed initiatives by modelling supportive practices and reshaping school environments to prioritise relationships, compassion, and restorative growth over obedience. The literature highlights the need for trauma-informed teaching strategies to improve students' safety and belonging. Key practices include social emotional learning, so SEL programs, predictable routines and restorative practices. The mandatory resilience, rights and respectful relationships curriculum in Victorian school is, it's the four R's, the resilience, rights and respectful relationships curriculum, which Victorian schools have been mandated to teach since 2016, supports these efforts by teaching emotional literacy and personal strengths. Additionally, building strong partnerships with families and community organisations extends these supportive practices beyond the classroom. It promotes respect, empathy and resilience. The literature highlights safe and inclusive communication in trauma-informed classrooms to ensure students feel acknowledged. The key points to this include creating safe environments, arranging seating for interaction, establishing norms for active listening and respect, and respecting cultural diversity. These practices are vital for that inclusive communication in classrooms. Okay. Thank you so much for listening. I just want to finish off by saying that the significant impact of trauma on students' learning and wellbeing, it's really important to integrate trauma-informed practices in educational settings, the needs of affected students, because it fosters resilience. Educators can be catalysts for change through professional development, inclusive communication, and creating safe learning environments. Together, we aim to cultivate classrooms where every student feels valued and empowered. Thank you for your commitment to this important cause. And you'll see on my following slides, there is my reference list. Thank you and have a great day.